not always just a bad reason. There may be reasons which are understandable from both sides, from the side of the doctor and from the side of the customer. One of my very good friends is professor in Athens, Greece. He has 3 children, and then he had 4,000 euros of salary.
Мій хороший друг професор працює в Греції, у нього є 3 дітей, і у нього 2000 євро зарплати.
Can I just continue to speak? I don't have to wait until the translation happens. Okay, and he had 4,000 euros of salary 5 years ago. Now he has 800 euros. What happens? He has started to open his own business, and now he works 4 days for his own business and 1 day for the university. And why? Because he says, we need the money to support the family. And I can understand him. So we will not find easy solutions this afternoon, and all of you know that. But let's try to make the world a little bit better. Corruption has. And I have put together some definitions of corruption which all of you may know. The first one is, it's an abuse of an entrusted power for private and personal advantage. You have a position in the public service, and this position allows you to decide on specific issues, and you are only willing to decide on these issues if you get some money for your own sake. This is one definition. And the second is more a negative approach definition, which says you give or obtain advantages through illegitimate, immoral or inconsistent actions you take. Now this can happen in different ways, and however it happens, it has negative consequences. Corruption is not just bad because all of us say it's bad, but it has negative consequences for the society. And I have put together some of these negative consequences here on this slide. First, people who don't have money and need medical treatment may have to wait a long time for the treatment. So it is bad for those who are without power. And especially these people without power will probably not trust the government anymore, and they will say, oh, politicians, public service do whatever they want to do, and we are the losers. And this can cause social conflicts. A second negative approach is that if a society accepts corruption and thinks it's just part of the game, then it loses values. And how can you be a good example to society if you don't take care of any values anymore? But it's not only values, it's not only an ethical or religious reason which says corruption is harmful, but it is also that money is being thrown away. I think corruption leads to a financial loss. Because money goes to private sources, it goes away from the government, where it should be, and so we have some very few winners and many losers in society. And this loss of money can be seen by an effective and inefficient public service. Because those who pay will get faster service, but the rest of the society will have to wait for a long time, they have to wait for delays. On the way, when we had a city tour, we have seen 1-2 buildings which looked like nothing has happened then for years, and the reason is, as I have heard, that there have been delays in giving permission to construct these buildings. And such delays can really cause inefficiencies in a society and also cause financial losses. And last but not least, it can also cause fear and insecurity, because you never know how the government and the public administration will decide. I think the rule of law is so important for the trust of the people. And if you cannot trust the rule of law, then it's dangerous. We heard on our city tour that the housing prices fell about 40% the last 2 years. And one of the main reasons is people don't know if their house will still belong to them in a couple of years, if there is a rule of law that guarantees the property of this house and how the situation develops. And this is really very bad if there is no guarantee of one person's rights, and you always have to fear that situation can immediately change. Corruption fosters such things, and this is very dangerous. And that's why the director of Transparency International said in Oslo a couple of years ago that transparency and corruption kills more people on the globe than terrorism, which is a little bit exaggerated, but this is the task of the CEO of Transparency International. And he may be to some extent, he may have to some extent right, that corruption is really a problem to our society. One more example I can show you how corruption can happen.
У вас дуже мало грошей. Одного дня ви їдете на мотоциклі і поліція зупиняє вас за те, що на вас немає захисного шолому. Поліцейський пропонує вам офіційний штраф, який складає розмір $100, або він пропонує вам не виписувати штраф і дати йому 20. Питання.
How to behave in this way?
Як ви будетеся в цьому випадку? Може дати відповідь?
Я вибачаюсь, прошу всіх говорити в мікрофон, щоб перекладачі могли працювати.
Well, it's obvious not too bad, because it's not only the problem that the budget doesn't get $100, but it's also the small crime which makes the incentive for policemen to continue with bigger crimes in the future.
Це спонукає полісменів насправді і далі повинні вчиняти такі маленькі злочини на постійній основі.
Would you pay what he asked for?
I don't, in such case.
Ні, я ніколи не злочин таких.
Actually, I did it. I was in St. Petersburg and I was stopped by a policeman, and then I had to show the passport, and then he said, "This visa is not valid." And then said, "No, it's not valid." And he only spoke Russian, and so, but he knew some words of English, not valid. And then said, okay, said a penalty of I think it was about $10. I paid it because I feared more severe consequences if I don't pay. Because he has power, I have no power. He could do anything with me, or at least he could do things which are not so nice. That I have to go to a police station, wait for a couple of hours. I paid.
And also it is not your country and not your community, so you don't do harm to your peoples.
Because I feared that I have not the rights I actually have also in Russia, and that these rights would be followed by the police and by his supervisor. I was scared that he could do whatever he wants, because I did not trust in the rule of law in this country. As you have seen with these 3 examples, there are different phases of corruption. And I would like to summarize now some of the types of corruption we have. And Pete Grünenfelder, the expert, the practical expert, can give some additions. You see here a bit of the most frequent forms of corruptions we can see all over the world. Bribery, kickbacks, especially kickbacks are also something you can see in Switzerland. Last week there was a newspaper report which showed that a medical doctor at the University Hospital of Bern was paid a couple of $1,000 for every patient he sent to a private clinic for heart surgery. This deal was nice for the private hospital, they got patients, it was nice for the medical doctor because he got a little bit a better salary. And it was only by chance that it has been discovered. Such kickbacks are very difficult to discover. And why is this bad? It's bad because at the end it is being paid by the government who pays for the medical insurance of its citizens. The third form of corruption, which is also common also in Switzerland, is nepotism. And nepotism is not just bad, because to be honest, if you trust your partner, then it's easy to make business with them, and this is not just bad. I work closely together with Pete Grünenfelder because I trust him. And now when we have been invited to this place, we thought this is good if we come together. This is, to be honest, also a kind of nepotism. You have a colleague and you think he is good, so we work together. I think all of us have to work this way. You need partners in the government. When does it become dangerous? This is the important question. It becomes dangerous when all others have no chance anymore to get into a specific position, or if someone else makes a much better proposal, for example, never has the chance to get the position because you always take your friend, regardless of his skills, of how he performs. The fourth form of corruption is one you mainly find in developing countries, where the rule of law is at a very low level, where policemen or people from the government intimidate its citizens because there is really no rule of law, especially the courts are not independent. The fifth form, facilitation payments, also happen in countries where you have not enough resources for providing public services. So actually it would be free, but there is not enough staff or not enough education for everyone. So it helps to give some gifts. And you know, also this form of corruption is not so easy to differentiate between good and bad. For example, after our speech this morning, we received some chocolate. Is this corruption or not? So all of us know, no, so this is also a sign of politeness, and it's also a sign of thankfulness. But we heard yesterday that in the Swiss embassies, a couple of years ago, we had problems that not only chocolate was given, but also some flowers and so, in countries where it's not so easy to get a visa to go to Switzerland. And here, it gets more complicated, and probably this is a first form of corruption. If you hope, you give the gift first, and then we will see how she will decide on the visa question. So, giving gifts is not always corruption, but it's important to know under which circumstances these gifts are being given and what you can expect. That's why, for example, in Switzerland, we as professors, probably the same if you, can take a bottle of wine or something we can eat like chocolate, but we would not be allowed to accept a gift which would allow us to spend 1 week in a 5-star hotel with massage, etc. Some other forms of corruption you see here are collusion, that you have secret agreements. For example, you have an agreement with a party which is legal and so, but you have also a second agreement which says, okay, this agreement works now, but in 5 years I expect that you will behave this or that way. Also here, it's not so easy to say that this is always corruption. Politicians work this way. If you want to have majorities, you sometimes promise your opposition parties that you will give them something that if they support your proposition. This works how bargaining in a parliament happens. But there may also be a point where it starts to become dangerous, because you have an agreement with someone you would not have in case there would not be a second agreement, and then it harms society. Maybe Pete Grünfelder could now add a little bit so how this can be seen in real life in the canton of Аарgau, and maybe he can also already give some first thoughts on how to prevent these forms of corruption.
Thank you. Well, for one reason, the anti-corruption organization #1 in the world is called Transparency International, and that's, I think, one of the reasons. This is the top topic of the government and of the parliament, that we make everything transparent. And we cannot make a distinction influencing or trying to influence decision makers, political decision makers, administrative decision makers before the decision. If you contract out an activity and trying to influence them after the decision, after the political decision, after the administrative decision, and what happens in between. And when we talk about influencing decision makers before decision, we set up clear standards. Also based on World Trade Organization, that means if you want to contract out an activity after 250,000 Swiss francs, you're really obliged by law for so-called public tendering. That means you set up an advertisement and say, I need this and this activity. For example, I need this and this IT services. Make a proposal. And it's not one company or two companies. It can be a lot of companies. You set up public, clear standards how you measure the proposals. Who's giving me the best proposal? And who is giving me a mediocre proposal? And you rank them, make that public. Under 250,000 Swiss francs, if you search for external expertise, you have to invite at least 3 companies. And there also you set up clear standards which are published, which can be published. And then you measure it too, and you realize, and you can make it clear towards the public, towards the parliament, which one was the best proposal. And only under 50,000 Swiss francs, it's called, you can give a free-hand contract to an external company. Under 50,000 Swiss francs, but there, all contracts, like if I give an expertise contract to Rето Штайнера from his university institute, if I gave him one, the independent audit office, the independent audit office will analyze, will check, will audit whether this is just a contract I gave to him because he's a friend, or whether he delivered really expertise. And the audit office will publish every year towards the public whether all contracting out activities were done in a proper way, or whether it was overpaid, or whether nothing was delivered, but it's just kind of a fake contract. So we actually, we try by clear standards, transparent standards, we make it clear for everybody. And looking for a job, looking for an activity, asking for to give it, they have to give a bit. They just don't get just a sum paid by the public office. What we also have, which is, it's not ridiculous, but it's special too, we're not allowed at all on the government level or on administrative level to get some presents. Except wine. But here we're talking about Chateau Petrus cost $2,000. Unfortunately, usually it's a lousy Swiss wine you get. I'm not kidding, but it's really like that. We have the saying, what you can drink in 2 hours and what you can eat in 2 hours, it's still allowed. Otherwise it's bribery. And it's like that, it's kind of delicate, but we really have to be careful when we have foreign governments, diplomats, ambassadors visiting us. It's also kind of saying thank you, they give you presents. So, for example, from the government, state government of Geneva, when they visited us, the state government of Аарgau, to each member of the government, they gave us a very nice watch. We had to refuse it. They had to take it back. Actually, they should have known it because they're also Swiss state government, but we had to refuse and give it back. When a diplomat arrives at the government building, at an office, and he wants to give me a present, I have to accept it. We have to write it down on a list, and then we put it into a room and deposit there for the next 100 years. We cannot use it. And what our independent audit office does too, they check constantly, they analyze constantly the financial stream between the departments towards the external service providers. And they make these so-called plausibility checks. For sure, I'm discussing here, or telling you, explaining you the Swiss method, because we are in a highly developed system nowadays. But what we also had to implement a few years ago was the so-called Ombudsmann, which is kind of an independent institution when you're not happy with government services, when you go to the hospital, like the example that the Professor Steiner explained before, when you think you're not treated fairly by public services, you don't go to the government, you don't go to the administration. Sure, you can go there. You don't go to a parliamentarian, you go to an independent institution. And you don't go to the, you can also go to the audit office, but this is an independent institution. There you go, complain what you think went wrong. And this independent complaint institution has all the rights. They can really command or order the governor, they can order me, they can order all levels of the administration, and we are forced to tell them what we know, and we're forced by law to present them all the papers, what we think, what is our side, and then this independent institution will say, okay, this is okay, what you did in public administration or in the government, or this is not okay, and that's what you should do. And I think this is because this independent complaint institution, if I may use this term, doesn't exist in all the Swiss cantons, but it exists in most of the big cities. And to know as a citizen that you're treated not nicely, that you don't have the same chance like in the hospital, only if you have money. I think this forces the administration, the public services providers, to give everybody the same chance. For sure, I know I'm talking from a different level. And I know we have a different economic situation. And I know how difficult the process is for you. But what we're really trying to do is forward the decision of the public services to set up clear standards. After the decision-making process, not that you get presents, except this bottle of wine, but usually you have to drink it then together with the colleagues. And if they're not happy with public services, you can go to an independent institution. And I think that helps us too, that public administration and members of the government, they're all forced to work in a very proper way.
I will translate myself to Ukrainian. Я перекладу таку. What is the standard approach for business if they feel they are not doing properly? Do they also address the same institution? Підхід, що робить бізнес? Тобто, якщо бізнес почуває, що це несправедливо провелися, незадоволені, чи він факт скажеться в цю незалежність?
Я перепрошую питання в цьому відеозапису. Звичайно. Це буде потім модуль такий, який зможуть ці ознайомитися.
Okay, if you don't win public tendering as a company, if you rank number 2 or 3, because this public indicators kind of why you lost a bid. For sure, they sometimes show up in my office, explain to them, and if they're not happy, they can I'm not a lawyer, that's why I'm missing some of the words in nature. Then you go to the first level of court, which is the cantonal court. And then there's a decision by the cantonal court saying yes, this was a fair process based on clear indicators, clear measurement. And if you're not happy with the court decision, then it's called the administration court. You can go to the Supreme Court, Cantonal Supreme Court, step number 2. And you're still not happy then you can go to the Federal Supreme Court, which is kind of And this is one of the disadvantages because we kind of over-regulated or too many courses in Switzerland. You know, we try to be perfect in everything, anti-corrupt, whatever, but then we give everybody a chance to take all the legal means. And that takes up, if you want to, let's say, build a tunnel or build a new railway station. We talk about 100 million of Swiss francs, and then you lose it as a competitor. You lose the bid. And you're under pressure as a government, as a state government, because we wanted to build a new railway station 25 years ago. And we had for 12 years we were on courts of all levels. Because one of the company losing the bid, they took all the legal means possible, which is kind of, you know, then you lose kind of competition too, because it's too many legal possibilities. That's now the negative side of our society.
Скажіть, будь ласка, за які кошти існує ваш незалежний інститут скарг? Хто оплачує роботу його?
It's an independent budget of the government. It's the public funding. It's an independent institution of the government and the parliament. The person being the head of this independent institution is elected by the parliament for 9 years. 9 years. The normal legislature period is 4 years. So this gives him a very independent position. Also elected only once. So there's no rerun. So he doesn't have to wait, you know, after 8 years, well, now I have to make decisions that probably the government doesn't like or the parliament doesn't like. So there's once for 9 years. It's very highly paid. He earns more than a member of the government. So, and usually it's a persons are elected with high moral public reputation, that we know they're clean, if I may say. Former professors of universities, former top businessmen who have the reputation of being very good businessmen, you know, also very social persons. And I think this helps us too, because it's a process. Usually it's not a competition for this position among candidates. Usually there's one person in a canton or in a city that has such a high reputation, usually retired, and says, okay, I'll do it, because yeah, I'm kind of service for the public.
Дякую. А чи були випадки, коли рішення інституту скарг оскаржувалися в суді, коли посадовці були не згодні з рішеннями цього інституту?
Yes, but usually, you know, because it has such a high standard, and this institution, they do have lawyers too, so they go into detail and check that out too. And then usually, they never actually, to my knowledge, their decision was never overruled. But I have to make clear too that usually normal citizens go to this independent institution. Companies, when we talk about millions of Swiss francs that lose a bit, they go directly to the court and say, we'll go to this independent institution and try to overrule the government's decision or the division's decision by a court decision. It's a stronger instrument for the weak citizen.
Дуже дякую. Хотів би теж скористатися і задати наступне питання пану Петеру. З приводу того, що в Україні зараз створюються механізми протидії корупції.
Зокрема, нещодавно був завершений конкурс на заміщення голови антикорупційного бюро. Хочу сказати, що закони були прийняті 14 жовтня минулого року, а призначення голови відбулося тільки через 8 місяців. Тобто це більше нагадувало процес беатифікації, ніж обрання, в принципі, державного чиновника. І тепер чиновник говорить про те, що цей інститут запрацює, можливо, через півроку. Тобто, бо є 700 чиновників і ще не один не призначений. Наскільки в ситуації, де для країни корупція зараз є найбільшою загрозою, чи не стає, скажімо так, оця конкурсна робота самоціллю? І чи, яка є практика в Швейцарії? Чи є антикорупційне бюро або якийсь аналог, який займається боротьбою з корупцією у вищих ешелонах влади? Дякую.
Actually, we don't have an institution which has the brand name Anti-Corruption Agency. As Pete Grünenfelder already told us, we have a quite tough regulation when it comes to corruption. What we have is, and we then continue to talk about how can we prevent corruption, we have a very strong audit committee, even at the local level, which really controls the activities of the government. For example, I have been president of the control committee of the city of Langenthal, a city with 20,000 residents. During the Euro Championship a couple of years ago in the Ukraine, our president, our mayor, organized a public viewing zone. And the people really loved it. And my committee really had a job which was not liked by the public and by the mayor, but I think it was our job to do that. We wanted to know from the government, and we had the right to have a look into all documents of the government. This is the right the control committee has, on how this job or these jobs have been given to private companies. One was having the screen, bringing the screen, one was selling the drinks, etc. And we found out that the mayor gave this to companies without asking for any bids. And the government and the mayor said, what is wrong with that? The people loved it and everything worked well. But our job was to say, okay, it was a success, but the way it has been proceeded is not acceptable. So even at the local level, we have these control committees. These are elected people, in small municipalities directly elected by the citizens, in large municipalities elected by the parliament. It depends on the canton, I don't know if it's a bit different in use, this is the way how it works in the canton of Bern. So this elected committees, standing committees are important to control the activities of the government. Additionally, we have very good audit offices at the national level and also at the cantonal level, which really control, as Pete Grünenfelder already told, how the money is being spent, how the procedures are being followed by the administration. But these agencies don't have the title anti-corruption agency, they have a control function, and this is a way of preventing and discovering corruption. Last but not least, we have NGOs which are active in Switzerland as well, especially Transparency International. They have their headquarters just a couple of meters beside our office, and their job is to publicly declare corruption is not acceptable. They publish the rankings. You have the same here in the Ukraine as well. Transparency International tries to make the topic more public. And this is important in Switzerland as well, because we have few corruption, but we have it. Just last week, I told it this morning, I'm in the board of university in Bern. We had to dismiss one of the financial controls because he had transferred research money to non-existing researchers. Okay, sometimes research is not so important, not visible even if it happens, but in this case it was universities researchers don't live at all. He used the money because he likes to play games in casinos, he had a lot of debt, and since last week, unfortunately, he's not financial control anymore, and he has even more financial problems, but will probably also go to prison. So, I would say, there we have really working institutions which fight corruption, not having this corruption type.
Just one additional statement. I think because I don't think that. No, because you know it's not all golden in Switzerland. I really love this session. The main challenge when it comes to corruption in Switzerland is not on a national level, because as you know, our members of the administration, like the members of the government, are very well paid, not on the cantonal level. The same, very well paid administration, very well paid members of the government. The problem starts and ends on the local level. Because Rето Штайнera explained this morning, the small communities, 70 people, the smallest local authority. But there also there's a full WTO status. But if in a small community, 1,000 people live there, they want to build up a new school. They have the autonomy. Thanks God, decentralized country, we love it. But they have the financial means. They build up a new school, 2-3 million Swiss francs it costs. They should set up the building construction based on WTO standards. Public tendering. The local council is under pressure from the local construction companies living in the same city boundaries. They want the job. You know, these are employees, taxpayers. There it starts. Then have a small public administration on the city level. You know, that takes Peter. They come to my office and say, Peter, why do we have to use the WTO standards? And it takes so much time, you know, to set up all the indicators. We know the best construction companies in our city, and then we really have to force them. And we say, this is tendency of corruption, or it's going to be corruption if you don't make this public tendering. Otherwise, we send the audit office to you, and when we make it public, and then you really have a problem. Then you go to prison. I mean, there it starts the problem, because if you have a small administration, but you still have the autonomy, the tax autonomy, the revenues coming in directly, and a local council knowing everybody within the city, employees that pay taxes, they're really from the government, from the state government, and we have also a department of local government, even on the state government level, and there also do the inspection and the independent audit, even an additional audit to the audit office. So I think there we have to be strong. It's never a problem, it has never been a big problem in Switzerland on the national level, on the state level. It starts really with the small communities.
How to discover corruption? I think this is something we should talk about now. Because I think it's a bit too easy to say we need an agency which fights corruption, that everything works. I think every one of us should be alert to potential corruption in our neighborhood or in our office. And the question is, how can we see that there are signs of corruption? How do you personally see that?
First sign is when there is incentive created some uncomfortable circumstances that make incentive for customer, for the client of the public service for corruption, to pay something. So when some terms of provision, some approval are delayed, etc., etc., etc.
What do others think?
Корупцію ми можемо ще побачити, коли приноситься на підпис документ, а кажуть, що чогось не вистачає, потрібно ще перевірити. І так тиждень, 2, місяць. І починаємо розуміти, що тут щось інше, ніж просто не вистачає підпису.
В клінічній існує така проблема відсутності медицини, за яку ми сплачуємо, так, офіційно. І коли ми приходимо, скажімо, на операцію планову, існують такі каси лікарняні, які мають забезпечувати повністю перелік ліків, лікарняного ліжка і так далі. В регіонах сума такого збору складає офіційно газу близько 2000 гривень. Але крім цього, ще, коли людина приходить на цю операцію, вона повинна сплатити ще за наркоз, особисто лікарю, який оперує, і потім після такої операції ще купити ліки.
Ще такі випадки при проведенні конкурсів на заняття вакантних посад в органах державної влади відсутні чіткі критерії посад. І коли пишуть екзамен буде, то ту саму відповідь можна поставити різні оцінки. І одним, наприклад, дозволяють прислати зовнішні матеріали, конституцію, телефони, якимось навушниками, іншим не дозволяють. Бувають варіанти більших білетів, що секретар визнає білет, а решта кажуть тягнути.
На жаль, в наших лікарнях і школах часто проскриптують наступне. Батькам учнів або пацієнтам пропонують внести нібито благодійні добровільні внески і на розвиток тієї ж лікарні або школи. Але насправді, якщо пацієнт або батьки дитини відмовляються від цього, то на дітей або на пацієнтів може здійснювати певний тиск. Особливо в школах. Це дуже спостереження.
To have a systematical approach is when there is absence of clear procedure. So the body can be treated ambiguously, especially from the decision-making side. So there's evidence that there is well-sought corruption.
I think there are two ways how to discover that corruption happens. One is if you have a look at the individuals, and then one is if you have a look at the organization. You have now mainly mentioned organizational signs of corruption, but we can also see signs of corruption in the individual. I think the most important signs we can see is that the lifestyle of one person is not adequate to his standard of living, or that someone behaves a little bit strange, arrives early than the rest, always leaves last, it seems that he has some negotiations with someone, or has a behavior which is not so much explainable. So we have signs in the individual. I know this is more complicated to discover, or you may discover it, but it's more complicated to blame it, because the reasons could also be different ones. Probably it's easier to discover the signs of corruption in an organization, and you have mentioned many of the signs. One sign can be that we have a very bad financial department, the budget arrives too late, the financial statement arrives too late, or only some part of the financial statement is being delivered. We asked for reports at the university for research projects, and why did they discover it? So, the chief control discovered it because the report has never been delivered. And after a couple of months, now I need the report, and then the report came, but the report was by far too short. And the report of what has been done in this project was very short, it sounded very superficial, and this can be signs something is wrong. So, poor financial reports, or if there are no policies or written down procedures in place, this can also be signs of corruption, or at least signs that this is an environment where corruption can happen. Another sign of corruption, or a pre-sign of corruption, is if we have a complex hierarchy, and it's not clear who is responsible for whom. I'm a scholar of management studies, and I think one of the most important rules I teach my students is we need a congruence between tasks, competencies, and responsibilities. This is also true for decentralization, but it's also true for how work has to be done in an administration. People who have tasks need the competencies, but they have also to be responsible for that. And if this is not a congruence then we have, or we soon have problems. If no one understands who decides on what, then it can be a ground, a soil for corruption. These are signs, but it's clear we never know if this is corruption. But this can make us alert so that we can really think of, hey, here is something we have to improve. Besides the hard discoveries of corruption, and this mainly happens with what we have mentioned before, these standing committees which control the government's activities, and these internal or external audit offices which formally approve the financial numbers, but also the annual reporting of the single departments of an administration. I think it needs both. People who are alert of such signs, possible signs, and then official institutions who really check if corruption has happened. Just to find out now that there is corruption not enough, the most important thing is how we can now prevent corruption or curb this illness. This is one last slide I would like to show you, and I think here we can really talk about it. How do we create a working environment which prevents corruption? Some things I have written down, and I'm sure you can add, and especially also Pete Grünfeld, the expert for practical corruption prevention in Switzerland, can also give some add-ons. First is, I think it's important to have a standard set of procedures and policies in place. And here I'm not talking just about a law, which may be very important, or a code of conduct being imposed by the government. But it can make sense, especially in societies or in nations where corruption is really a hot issue, that even in a small department, the department head really talks about corruption, and he also has his own rules he develops together with his staff. I think sometimes it's easy to say, oh, we have a law, follow the law. But it's much more effective to develop rules of conduct within a department together with the employees. So the employees have to start to think on where are the problems? How can you prevent the problems? Okay, there may be some corrupt people in this group developing the policy, but probably they will be very silent when they hear it. But maybe that they also learn something, and it makes everyone of the staff of the department alert of corruption when they develop the rules together. It's clear the rules cannot be different than the national ones or than the national law, but they can be a little bit made more precise, more fit to the real situation of the department, of the task this department has to do. So we need a code of conduct, an official one, a formal one, but also informal code of conduct. And here we need a good leadership. If a leader of a department thinks this is not so important, then it will be difficult for a regular employee to discover corruption, to prevent corruption. So we must start with the head. The field can only do what the head says, and if we have bad leaders, and I'm not talking just about the Prime Minister, but also about a leader of a group of 4 or 5 persons, we have to start to change the mind or to make the leaders also of small groups aware of the problem. And they can then start initiate the code of conduct process within their department. Besides this soft and hard law, we need institutions which fight corruption. Here, I think we may need an agency, an anti-corruption agency, as we create now in the Ukraine. But additionally, or more importantly, we need official institutions which really regularly monitor the activities of the government and the administration. These internal audit offices or even an external audit offices. This means that not only the financial expenses are being evaluated, but also the outcome of the public policies. In Switzerland, it is more and more common that decisions being made by the parliament, for example, preventing tobacco consumption, and then the parliament gives a couple of million francs for the prevention, but after some time it's being evaluated if this money has been wisely spent, not only that the money is really spent for tobacco prevention, but the result is also visible. Peter Grünenfelder said this very nicely this morning, that you set goals and then you measure if the goals have been reached. And this is also an anti-corruption measure. You must prove that you really reached the goal. Additionally, we need more accountability. By having a regular monitoring, you also oblige the institutions to present or to prepare reportings. I think it would be bad just to write reports which are being sent to these committees and that's it. But we need more public reports. And especially e-government is very nice for such reports. You can publish the performance of your institution. You can publish how much money you spend, how much revenues you have, and then the public sees what happens. And the public is the best controller, I think, of public institutions. I also think it's important that you have an openness to the needs of the citizens. Not only politicians need this openness, as I told this morning, but also small agencies of an administration. That people can call you, that you have a hotline, or you have a customer counter where people can come and ask questions. If you have an openness towards your citizens, your customers, you also prevent corruption. It's not a guarantee, it's clear. There can be a corrupt officer at this count, but more and more publicity you allow, less and less chances you give to have a corrupt approach to your citizens or customers. And then I think we also need an openness towards people who are whistleblowers. But I know this is a difficult issue because whistleblowing is good if the whistleblowers really say corruption happened, but if whistleblowers just blame someone for corruption who is not corrupt, can destroy his career. This This is dangerous. In Switzerland we also have some very few cases where whistleblowers also have egoistic motives for blaming other people. And here we must be careful whom we believe. But I think we need an openness that errors can be reported. Some Swiss hospitals have introduced a very interesting system. Whenever an error happens, and errors can always happen, then every employee is obliged to write what has happened into a computer system without any name. So, at the top they see what problems happen in the hospital in order to improve it, not to sanction it. And while the hospital started that, the University Hospital of Basel was the first one introducing this system. It is to save lives. It may happen the error to give the wrong medication. And as a doctor, it's embarrassing to tell I gave the wrong medication, but you can do this anonymously. If you don't know who did what, then you help to improve the system that such wrong medication does not happen anymore. This is how it started at the University Hospital. It started because a patient died of a problem which has not been reported and it could have been prevented. So you should have an openness towards whistleblowers that they can anonymously report what has happened. And then, last but not least, it's like educating a child. You need sanctions for corrupt behavior. And here the question is, what should the sanctions be? I mean, the Chinese government is not the best example of how they treat officials who are corrupt. They hang them, or they have problems in their entire family, etc. And if you punish people by using instruments which are not that human, then you show your own face as well. So this is not the way how you behave. I think we also need a rule of law when it comes to sanction corruption. This means an official trial, and the prosecutor should also use official instruments to discover corruption, not illegal activities. And then you also should have a law which says what is the penalty for what kind of corruption, amount of money or how severe the corruption was. And then the penalty should be human but harsh, but still human. So you can show that the government really follows the rule of law. So not a Wild West or Wild East, whatever we want to say. If you see this list, do you or can you add something, or what do you think is most effective? What have you done in your country? Maybe also Pete Grünenfelder will have some add-ons.
Найважливіше, що ми повинні враховувати, це санкції, як ви сказали, відповідальність. Тому що, наприклад, в нашій країні можна скільки завгодно говорити, повідомляти про випадки корупції, однак ніхто не понесе жодного покарання, тому що ці випадки можуть бути просто оголошені, однак вони будуть як розслідувані і ніхто не понесе покарання.
May I give one answer to that? Just a second. Even in highly anti-democratic countries like China, it starts to work. And my colleague said before, it's a change of mind of the people. And you know, China has social media. You know, the bureaucrats, the administrators, that were publicly shown with their extremely expensive watches, what they did, all on social media platforms. And I think that helps too in anti-democratic countries like China, and have to change the mind of the administration everybody knew that there were, some of them, a lot of them actually, unfortunately, very corrupt. So I think everybody on the street, us too, because we faced some shitstorm too, that's the English word for if something goes wrong on the social media platforms. And we were offended what we did wrong, what the public thought. And you know, sometimes on the social media platform you don't have a chance. You cannot react just to see what happened and then try to get the facts and figures together and then respond to the public. But in all the countries of the world, as far as I know, except Russia, I think they have all the same opinion. You really can use social media as a normal citizen. And if it's really, if something is not fair happening by the public services, then it's going to be transparent. Sorry about that.
Дякую, прошу. Можливо, є чіткість і прозорість адміністративних процедур і опис процесів. Таке питання ще, наскільки Швейцарія використовується процесний підхід в органах влади, тобто це бізнес-метод.
I think we can use business methods. Although I know public service and private sector are not the same. There are really differences. But we can use methods of the private sector. One of the most effective methods from the private sector we could use in public service is to give a guarantee for public service delivery. What does this mean? There are banks in Switzerland which say that you have a decision on a mortgage within 48 hours. Or I'm responsible for the information technology at our institute and I have a contract with a public company which tells me if your computer is not working anymore, we will be present within 4 hours. These are promises of a certain service standard. I pay a lot to this private IT company, but I need this service because if our server is not working anymore, we cannot work anymore at our institute. I think the government can learn from these service guarantee standards. Not by providing an answer within 48 hours in every case, but by telling the people how do the procedures work. For example, if you want to construct a house. Or how does it work if you need a passport. In Switzerland, the Swiss government tells you you have your passport within, I think, 7 days or something like that. You have to order the passport online on a website. And they write, the passport will arrive within 7, maybe it's 8 days, I don't know, but it's a very short time. And now I know that I have the right to receive this passport within 7 days. So it is difficult for a public servant to say, no, we need much more time, etc. The promise is here, and as a citizen I know what my rights are. I think with such service standards we tell the people we take them serious and they can expect something from the government, and it's much more difficult to be corrupt as a public servant.
We just have it absolutely correctly, but it's also system. We adapted from abroad, from the United Kingdom. There they have the so-called charters. We talk about the hospitals, the different level of services, depending where you pay an additional amount of money. In the UK, they have service charges at the entrance of each hospital. With clear stamps where you can inspect. Point number 10, a number you can complain if you don't do the services you want as a taxpayer, as a citizen. We really have to force our Swiss railway system company, which is a public company, because Swiss people want Swiss public railway transport as being a public company, public enterprise. We force them to make public First of all, that they have to guarantee that I think 97 or 98% of all trains must be on time. And if they're late more than 10 or 12 minutes, that they have to refund the ticket price to the customer. For sure it's bureaucratic, then you have to go to the ticket counter, etc. And we adapted this system from the United Kingdom. It was not our invention. You know, it forces then the management of the public administration to deliver these services. And I think here we have to work too to make transparent, to make public for everybody, and not in a contract with 100 points, just in a contract with 10 points at the entrance of a hospital, at the entrance of the train station, what you can expect if you pay a certain price or if you pay taxes if you go to a public hospital. And you know, it's not all Swiss inventions. There are also some inventions, especially from the United Kingdom, that we can learn about too.
I would also add from Ukrainian specifics, but almost the CS country specifics, is environment is crucial, because especially the middle level and lower level of public services, there is very popular this conservative mindset. When working on the self side, I have 5 years of pension, I don't want to make anything risky or anything new. It was always done this way, I cannot change this process, etc., etc. And then if we have like majority of people with such mindset, even if new people are coming, even if the rules are coming, it is very difficult to really get things going. So it's crucial to change the environment.
That's why I think it can make sense that we have more job rotation in the public administration. I think it's important to have a permeability, this is the English word, between private sector and public sector, but also between departments of the public sector. I think it's great if someone works for his entire life in the public sector. But is it really so great if someone has 40 or 30 years the same job in the same department? I think we need such persons, but not everyone should be this way. We need more exchanges. And so the department remains much more flexible. I think we need fresh blood, but also old blood in a department. And this makes it much more effective.
And it comes to the next word sometimes.
Справа в тім, що в Україні корупція носить колективний характер. Тобто, якщо медсестра бере гроші, то вона ділиться обов'язково з лікарем, а лікар там з головним лікарем. Точно так і чиновник ділиться коштами з безпосереднім своїм начальником, а той з керівником установи. І, звичайно, якщо буде якась ситуація, то цей ланцюжок залишиться на місці, може прийняти інших людей. Це, звичайно, дуже складно в Україні. І завдання пересічного громадянина, якщо ти йдеш в таку установу, то потрібно знайти людину, як ми говоримо, яка вирішує це питання. Тобто, яка бере хабар для того, щоб вирішити питання. Щоб попав на цей електронок, вирішити питання. Це є.
It's not easy to fight corruption. I really think one of the most important things we could do is to have a salary which makes you living. But also this is easy to say, but not easy to accomplish if you don't have the financial resources. But as long as we have salaries which don't allow to live from, then it's very difficult to fight corruption. But in order to uncover corruption in an entire department that everyone gets a little bit, so no one tells it to someone else, is only possible if you have an external audit or an internal audit, but which is very independent, as it is the case in Switzerland. Pete Grünenfelder cannot just give a phone call to the auditor of the canton, arguing, telling him do this or that. this institution, I don't know how it is organized in your canton, but in most cantons, acts completely independent. Even if it's part of the financial department or of a chancellery or wherever, but they can act completely independent. And this is important, so you never know when these guys come. And to be honest, I hate these guys. They have been in our department, Institute of the University, a couple of years ago, the last 3 years ago. And it's so annoying. They stay 4 days, they usually don't laugh, they are not attractive that you think, oh, it's cool that you are here, but they look like very angry or unfriendly, want to see everything, you have to explain everything. They prevent you from your real work, you think, and you are always scared they find out something. Not corruption, but I think not everything is completely as it should be. Even in our institute, sometimes I also have to hurry and I don't write the paper as I should, etc. And as soon as they find it out, they write a report to the rector or to the government, and you don't like this report. So no one likes them, to be honest. But probably it's important that we have them and they act independently. And usually the government behaves quite tolerant as long as it's not a very bad behavior of it. They also know we are all humans and no one is perfect.
Дякую. Наш час підходить до завершення виділений. Я хотів би, можливо, почути такі підсумкові думки, буквально на 5 хвилин, ну і надати слово нашим шановним спікерам. Хто хотів би висловити свої думки, буквально в дуже такому стислому варіанті?
Дякуємо нашим гостям. Я хотіла подякувати і за те, що ви показали, що корупцію реально подолати. Це дуже приємно. Досвід Швейцарії це показує. Так що в нашій країні є куди, на кого рівнятися і куди йти. Дякуємо.
Цікавим прикладом, який вчора по системі навчання розказували, коли 2 дні навчання, а 3 дні практика, безпосередньо в органах влади. Тобто це якраз ротація, коли цей студент в іншому органі влади він зможе відкривати на речі ці ієрархічні домовленості і корупційні схеми, тому що він не пов'язаний з цим органом влади. А власне таке питання, чому ці критерії, коли йде оцінка тендерів, є закриті? Чому вони не відкриті для громадськості? По яких оцінюють за тендерні пропозиції?
As Pete Grünenfeld told us, for example, canton of Bern, until 50,000 Swiss francs, it's not public. So these are for very small mandates. Our institution, for example, is if I buy 5 computers, then I can buy computers wherever I want for small amounts. From a certain amount, as Pete Grünenfeld told, then I have to invite a couple of companies. And in canton of Bern, we have to declare who we have invited. The public can know that. They cannot ask to see all the bids, so you cannot say, I would like to see what my competitor has exactly written. I don't know how it works in Аарgau, because there may also be company secrets inside. But you can have a look at the complete process, etc. And starting a certain amount, then it's completely public, everything, and everyone can send a bid to the government. It depends on the amount of money. It makes sense that for very small amounts it has not to be completely public. Actually, afterwards you can ask to see that if you know as a citizen, but otherwise you cannot even buy a pencil without a bid. It's clear this would not be very effective. So it makes sense that you have thresholds of amounts at which certain standards must be followed.
Дякую. Резюмуємо. Прошу не запитання резюмувати все-таки, оскільки наші гості вже вичерпали час і Я не переривав, прошу.
Интересно, инновационно, структурировано. Спасибо.
Я також хочу подякувати за цікаву зустріч і як підсумок сказати, що так, сьогодні в українському суспільстві існує величезний заклик до гучних розслідувань тих чи інших корупційних схем на різних щаблях державної влади, оприлюднення мас-медіа. Це ніби така жага помсти запровадження корупції. Проте стає очевидним, і мені особисто завдяки зустрічі з вами, що більше уваги треба зосереджувати на превентивних методах. Отже, сподіваємося, що нам вистачить розуму, наснаги і сил все ж таки приділяти більше уваги попередженню корупції, ніж вже безпосередньо боротьби, подолання її наслідків. Дякую.
I also sent the boss, and I think that our moderator will support me that we would love to see once again with more advanced trainings on particular matters, so welcome to Ukraine.
Дякую.
Я хочу зробити підсумку як викладача. Колега, хочу знову сказати право. І з 12-бальної системи я вам поставила групу 100 балів. Тому що якщо це тренінг, якщо йде оцінювання слухачів, піде вам також. Ось, молодці. Дійсно, ви знаєте, це чудово, коли взаємодія йде між викладачами, коли йде таке доповнення, ну це дуже гарно. Ми з колегою просто заходимо і будемо казати, ага, викладачам, які сьогодні прийшли, а нам пощастило, бачите, як працювати. І я хочу ще сказати ще одне щодо корупції. Дійсно, у нас питання, у нас за дуже великий штат державних службовців в Україні, але кількість... Але кількість, напевно, що як ми говоримо, треба зменшити державних службовців в Україні. Треба зменшити. Але кількість не прийде в якість, коли ось тут дійсно сьогодні ви показали гарно. Треба змінити тут ключик, переключити свідомість, ментальність. В нас в Україні є клятва державного службовця, як клятва лікаря, клятва гіпсократа. Але оці клятви, як на мене, це клятва, те саме, що ми фактично клятва як присяга. Я маю діяти в межах закону, я маю не виходити за межі закону. І коли оце відбудеться, то напевно, що кількість, вона абсолютно буде якість службовця, і влада не буде розумітися в Україні як преференції особисті, а буде розумітися як служіння громади. Дякую дуже. Приїжджайте ще.
Прошу, хто ще хотів би висловити думку із присутніх. Я тоді хотів би надати слово для резюмування нашого воркшопу докторам пану Рето і пані Петеру.
I cannot add on anything. It was a perfect resume of yours. Thank you. Of you all.
Thank you very much for your active participation. I don't find the words anymore. You see, we had a lot of workshops today, and so I think it's now time to finish. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck in preventing corruption and in fighting corruption.